Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and everything is gone. Your job is gone. Your bank account is empty. Your house belongs to the bank. In 2008, this nightmare happened to millions of people. Families lost their homes. Good workers lost their jobs overnight. Lifelong savings disappeared. But while millions were crying, a small group of quiet men was smiling. They did not lose anything. They became billionaires. How did they see the disaster before anyone else? And why did no one listen to their warnings? Keep listening, because today's story will show you how money really works and the secret lesson that can protect your future.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to StoryLingo. Today, we tell the story of the 2008 financial crisis. It is a story of greed, fear, hope, and courage. As you listen to this story in simple English, you will learn new words, improve your listening skills, and understand one of the biggest events in modern history. Subscribe to my channel to see more interesting stories. Take a deep breath, sit in a comfortable place, and let us travel back in time to the year 2005.
In 2005, America felt rich and happy. The sun was shining on quiet streets. Everywhere you looked, people were buying new homes, big houses with big gardens. A young man named Tom stood in front of a shiny white house in Florida. He worked at a local coffee shop. He did not make much money. His bank account was almost empty, but a smiling banker handed him a silver key.
Congratulations, Tom, the banker said. The house is yours. Tom looked at the key. But I don't have a good job, Tom whispered. How can I pay for this big house? The banker laughed. Don't worry. House prices only go up, always. If you cannot pay later, you can sell the house for more money. Millions of people bought homes they could not afford. Banks gave loans to anyone. They called these special loans subprime mortgages. A mortgage is a bank loan for buying a house. Subprime means high risk. The banks took these risky loans and packed thousands of them together into boxes. They called these boxes mortgage-backed securities. They sold them to investors all over the world, claiming they were safe as gold. Everyone was happy. Bankers got big bonuses. House prices kept rising. It looked like a dream that would last forever. But inside the boxes, the loans were rotten. The whole system was a giant balloon filled with hot air waiting for a pin. Far away from Wall Street, a quiet man sat in an office in California. His name was Dr. Michael Burry. Michael was a medical doctor who became a money manager. He had a glass eye and wore cargo shorts. He did not go to fancy parties. He sat at his computer, reading thousands of pages of financial reports. In 2005, Michael began reading the individual loan reports inside those Wall Street boxes. Line by line, page by page. His eyes widened. Millions of homebuyers had paid zero down payment. Many had no jobs. Some loans were given to people who did not exist. Michael tapped his desk. "This is crazy," Michael said to the empty room. "These loans are garbage. People will stop paying in 2007. The housing market will collapse." Michael decided to do something insane. He decided to bet against the housing market. Betting against something means you profit if it fails. It is called shorting. Nobody had ever shorted housing before. Wall Street believed housing was completely safe. Michael called the biggest banks on Wall Street. He asked a simple question. "Will you sell me an insurance contract against housing loans?" The Wall Street bankers smiled in disbelief. They thought Michael Burry was a crazy man throwing his money into the ocean. When Michael called, Wall Street bankers could not hide their laughter.
To them, American real estate had never crashed across the entire country. A senior banker named Greg sat across from Michael. Greg adjusted his expensive silk tie. "Dr. Burry," Greg said with a smirk, "you want to pay us millions of dollars every year in fees for housing insurance? Housing never fails. You are giving us free money." "I am serious," Michael answered calmly. "I want to buy hundreds of millions of dollars of credit default swaps. A credit default swap is an insurance policy. If housing stays strong, Michael pays the bank millions in fees. But if housing crashes, the bank must pay Michael billions." Greg signed the papers. Soon, Michael spent over $1 billion of his investors' money on these insurance policies. Traders laughed at the crazy doctor. They drank expensive champagne, celebrating free monthly fees from Michael. Meanwhile, another investor heard about Michael's trades. His name was Steve Eisman. Steve was an honest manager who hated fake corporate talk. Steve flew to Florida to see the reality. He saw rows of brand new houses, completely empty. He spoke to mortgage brokers who admitted, "We give loans to anyone. Unemployed people? It doesn't matter." Steve visited a club and met a dancer who owned 5 houses with 0 down payment. Steve stood on the street, feeling a cold shiver. Michael Burry was right. The machine was selling poison. Steve Eisman returned to New York knowing the truth. He immediately began buying insurance policies, betting against the banks. A few other sharp investors saw the truth too. 2 young men, Charlie and Jamie, managed a small fund in a garage. They found a financial report by accident, read the numbers, and could not sleep. They placed all their money on shorting housing. Now, a small group of outsiders was playing against the global financial system, but winning was a terrifying nightmare. The year was 2006. House prices stopped rising, but they did not crash yet. Meanwhile, every month, Michael Burry had to pay millions of dollars in fees to the banks. His investors were furious. They sent angry emails daily. "You are losing our money," one wrote. "Return our cash or we will sue you." Michael sat in his dark office, listening to heavy music to stay calm. He was losing tens of millions of dollars every month. His investors demanded their money back. Michael used a rare legal rule to freeze their accounts. Now, everyone hated Michael Burry. Friends stopped calling. Investors called him a thief. He stood completely alone, holding a $1 billion bet against the world. Michael looked at his computer screen. "Just wait," he whispered. "The math does not lie. The first domino is about to fall." In early 2007, the low interest rates on subprime loans ended. Millions of homeowners received new, higher mortgage bills. In Florida, Tom opened his mail. His monthly house payment jumped from $800 to $2,500. Tom stared at the paper in horror. "I only make $1,500 a month," Tom cried to his wife. "How can we pay this?" Tom tried to sell his house, but his neighbors were selling too. House prices began to fall quickly. Tom had no choice. He packed his bags, left the keys in the mailbox, and walked away. Across America, thousands of families walked away from their homes. For sale signs covered every street. Whole neighborhoods became ghost towns. When homeowners stopped paying, the Wall Street boxes lost their value. Mortgage-backed securities became worthless overnight. Inside giant banks in New York, alarm lights flashed. Banks owned trillions of dollars of these worthless assets. Bankers realized they were holding boxes of toxic debt. In April 2007, New Century Financial, a major mortgage company, went bankrupt. Over 3,000 workers lost their jobs in one day. Steve Eisman watched the news on television in New York. His assistant ran in. "Steve, default rates are skyrocketing."
Steve looked out the window at the busy streets. "It has started," Steve said softly. "The system is beginning to burn."
By summer 2008, the fire reached global finance. Wall Street banks froze. They stopped lending money because nobody knew which bank was safe. In September 2008, bank bosses gathered in New York. The room was full of fear. At the center was Lehman Brothers, a bank 159 years old. Lehman was drowning in bad housing debt. Lehman's CEO begged for help, but the government refused to save them.
On September 15th, 2008, Lehman Brothers declared bankruptcy. It was the largest bankruptcy in history. Hundreds of workers walked out of the building carrying brown cardboard boxes with their personal belongings. Desk plants, family photos, coffee mugs. Fired with no warning. Panic spread across stock markets worldwide. Trillions of dollars vanished in hours. European banks began to fail. Iceland's banking system collapsed in 1 week. People ran to cash machines in London and New York, but many machines were empty. Steve Eisman walked through Wall Street. He saw powerful men in suits sitting on the sidewalk, crying openly. The great financial machine was broken into pieces.
The financial crisis was no longer numbers on a screen. It was human suffering on every street. In Michigan, a worker named David stood outside his car factory. The iron gates were locked with a chain. A sign read, "Closed permanently." David had worked there for 30 years. Now, his pension was gone. His job was gone, and his health insurance was canceled. David sat in his car and wept. "How do I tell my family?" he whispered. "How do we survive?"
All around the world, ordinary people suffered. 8 million Americans lost their jobs. 4 million families lost their homes. The global economy lost trillions of dollars. Small shop owners closed their doors. Older workers sold wedding rings to buy food. Lines at food banks stretched for blocks. Tent cities appeared in major cities where families lived in cheap plastic tents. The biggest injustice was clear. Ordinary people who did nothing wrong lost everything. Governments used trillions of taxpayers' dollars to rescue the big banks, calling them too big to fail. Banks were saved, but normal families received almost no help. The gap between rich and poor grew wider than ever.
As the global system collapsed, the insurance policies held by Michael Burry and Steve Eisman exploded in value. Michael Burry sat alone in his California office. He logged into his account. His short bet had made $700 million for his investors and over $100 million for himself. He had won the biggest bet in history. He had proven the world wrong. Michael walked to his whiteboard and wrote down the final profit number. He stood there in complete silence. There were no celebrations or champagne. Michael felt a heavy sadness. He had predicted a disaster, and the disaster had ruined millions of lives.
Steve Eisman also made hundreds of millions, but when he collected the cash, he felt sick. "We were right," Steve told his partner. "But normal people got crushed. There is no victory here." The outsiders became billionaires, but winning against a broken world felt like a tragedy. Only one Wall Street executive went to prison. Most bank CEOs kept their fortunes in private jets. Michael Burry closed his fund, exhausted by the corruption, and returned to a quiet life. The story of the 2008 crisis is a powerful lesson. It shows how crowd thinking and greed can blind us, and how fragile our financial world really is. When something seems too good to be true, it usually is. The men who became billionaires did not win by magic. They won because they had courage to look at real facts.
when everyone else believed a pleasant lie. They asked hard questions and stood firm when people laughed at them. In your life, you will face moments where everyone moves in one direction. It takes bravery to stop, think for yourself, and walk your own path.
Thank you for listening to this story today, my friends. Now, I have a question for you. Do you think the financial system is safer today, or could a crisis like this happen again? Write your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If you enjoyed this story, please click the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more peaceful stories for your English journey. Check out another interesting story too. Keep learning, stay curious, and keep walking forward. I will see you soon in our next story.